Hello, welcome back to another episode of Circle One. I'm your host, John.
I'm Brandon.
Excellent. Today we are very excited to have Brandon Landgraf on the show. Brandon is actually one of the very first independent contractors that Auxesis worked with. And a bit of a side note about the model here at Auxesis. We work on an ongoing basis with independent contractors. So rather than finding an independent contractor here and there for project work, our goal is to develop long-standing relationships with independent contractors and to have them in a pool, kind of a little bit of a family, if you will. A bunch of entrepreneurs, independents, freelancers, and folks all working together as much as possible. So excited to have Brandon on the show. And today we're hoping to talk a little bit about what modern independents, plural, are like, what it's like to be an independent in the modern world, and also what that means for modern independence. So, Brandon, as is customary, I'll turn it over to you to begin, and maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about yourself, your work, your background, and what you're up to these days on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the live stream. It's always a pleasure. Like I said before, I'm Brandon. I'm a designer, thinker, and a marketer with a minimalist approach. And my day to day usually consists of doing freelance work. I work in the marketing and design sector, and I engage quite frequently with Auxesis on various projects, ranging from all sorts of things, anywhere from writing business plans to helping out with even some internal work, to also helping out with some document creation and design work as well. To explore a little bit of my background, I am still a student in attending the University of Manitoba. I am in the Asper School of Business and studying marketing. I have a few years left, but I am looking to keep learning and hoping to be a lifelong learner, always throughout my career.
Excellent. Well, it's been such a pleasure to work with you over the past little while. When do you think we started working together specifically?
Yeah, I was just trying to think about this because I feel like time has really snuck up on me, and I feel like I have not been doing freelance work for that long, but it's actually been a year at this point. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and I would say that you being Auxesis helped kick that off for me. Before then, I wasn't really doing freelance work. I think maybe I was doing a few odd jobs, but you really introduced me to the whole shebang.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun. I am humbled by the thought that that might be the case, but obviously I know you've got a lot of other influences in your life that have gotten you in the mix, and we're so grateful that you've had the courage to kind of explore independent work. A little bit of a sidebar here. We've got some folks joining us in the chat. We're experiencing our very first Twitter raid thanks to Mr. McHuntington's, Hunter McHuntington's. Yes. This is actually another Auxesis IC. This is somebody who we actually hired on a very small project to give us some advice about what live streaming is like, what it's like to live stream. So thank you, everybody in the chat for joining us. They are sending some very beautiful emojis, it looks like.
Nice.
Yes, yes, Brandon. I know you can't see it, but Mr. McHuntington says not a problem. Thank you very much. And thank you, Brandon Bunny and NL Spectre, for the beautiful emojis. And also thank you for your patience with me in showing my Twitch greenness and being okay with that. So without further ado, let's get back to it. Excited to maybe explore independent work with you a bit, what that's been like for you, a little bit of your history, your experience. Maybe we'll talk a bit further or more in depth in the projects that we've worked on together. And anybody in the chat that's joining us today, we'd love to get you involved. If you've got any questions for either of us, I would say to kind of frame things a little bit, I'm an independent. I've done a lot of freelance work, but I think the proper kind of position or framing is it's a place of continual learning. So we'll try to answer any questions as best as we can if you've got any. And I'm sure that maybe we can have some questions for you guys. I know that the raid party host, Mr. McHuntington's here, actually has some independent experience himself. So we might have some questions for you guys too. So getting back into things, Brandon, maybe we can start super high level here. And I'll start by asking, you're young. I think you're 21, if I'm not mistaken. Awesome. So, this question might be a premature question. It might be interesting to ask you this in another 5 years, 10 years from now. But can you tell us and our audience what approach you've taken in building your career and approaching working life?
Yeah, interesting. I feel like I wish I could give you a very outlined approach, but I feel like it's actually just been more uh, organic, if anything. Because I feel like I initially went to business school because I was interested in entrepreneurship and the idea of autonomy and creating something and just advancing the world in general. And so I feel throughout my time in school, I started to get introduced to different groups and different school groups who showed me some of the ropes on how to be independent and how to be an entrepreneur and how to go about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, it's been more organic than anything. And I think I've been fortunate enough where I've met people like you and others at school who ended up almost mentoring me and showing me what to do and what not to do. Having said that, I am very young and I have tons to learn, and I'm sure my mindset will change over the next 5 years, especially coming out of school. I would imagine that I'll have a very different mindset then as well. Um, so as for approach, it's just been quite organic.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested. I know that you've got some specific interests, and I think you and I share uh, some interests. If you don't mind, I am just going to check. We're getting some action from our production assistants who says they can't see the live stream. So maybe we can ask everybody in the raid party, and maybe they can give us some answers. Are you okay? Are you finding this live stream okay? Everybody says good. As learners of the Twitch platform, if I've got somebody downstairs also watching, they say, well, the page on Twitch that says is today's and is live with no video has nothing happening. It's on now. Woohoo! Here we go. So exactly to my point, the proper frame is, wow, we're learning. Somebody also says my audio is low. I think I'm about as good as I can get. Maybe I'll get closer to the microphone here. Okay, so from the context of learning, I want to learn about you, Brandon. We have some shared interests. You, I believe, are very interested in design, in branding, also in technology. Can you can you tell us, like, from a young age, or when you can first remember, what were those experiences that first got you interested in those areas?
That's interesting. I feel like from a very young age, I've been a little bit of a nerd, and like most young boys, I was very into video games actually. And being my curious self, I was very interested in how these games were constructed, what was actually behind the screen, and what was going on. So around, I think I was grade 7, maybe 13, 14 years old, I got very into coding. Actually, coded, and I used this one program called Unity and Blender. I figured I'd throw those out for the other nerds out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to learn how to construct different video games and how the code would work. But moving forward, as you had mentioned, we're both very interested in branding and design. And even though I was very interested in the tech side of things, I was also very interested in the design and branding side of things. And while I was constructing these games, I had to start to figure out how the visuals worked and how to use the different programs and how to craft the different visuals. And I would just say, fast forward throughout high school, I really started to cling on to the design side of things, the visual side of things, until
Mm-hmm.
eventually when I got into university, I feel like I was really exposed uh, to advertising and marketing, which I traditionally thought was just purely design and that there wasn't a technical background. But I have been proven wrong countless times, and there is a very strong technical side to marketing. And I would almost argue in a digital age, design and advertising work that you put out won't actually even do well or succeed without a strong technological side to it. Um, So high level. I Yeah, that's that's kind of been my transition into branding and design work.
Okay, there was one experience I remember in particular, and this gets maybe more away from the design. Obviously, design having technical stuff, but into the technological. I think, as you say, I believe I remember the day that we met, uh, which was at I think a student orientation, and you were very interested in one of the groups I was working with, the entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
What's the group? CEO Manitoba, the Collegiate Entrepreneurship Organization, which is a fantastic group at the University of Manitoba, out of the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship. If anybody in the raid party or anybody is watching and they're curious, check them out if they're looking for entrepreneurial resources. But I met you, we kind of hit it off, and you told me a story about refurbishing Xboxes or something of the sort. Is that the case? Do I have that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
What was the story there?
Yeah. Well, around the time that I was doing different design and coding work, I was also very interested on how the machines were actually created. And at a very young age, I would just start to rip everything and anything apart that was broken, just to see how it worked and how it was put together. Um, and then around the age 14 or 15, I had this Xbox system, and it had broken, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I figured I would attempt to fix it. And through some research and some trial and error, I was able to fix my Xbox. So I figured, well, maybe I could service a market, and maybe I could go out and collect Xboxes, fix them, refurbish them, and then resell them. And so I did that for about a year or two, and I did not think that that would be my kickoff to entrepreneurship, but truth be told, it really was. I believe that business is what introduced me to entrepreneurship and being independent, and even now my days of being an independent contractor.
Wow. So hold on. How old were you?
About 14, 15.
So you're 14, you're 15, you're cracking open Xboxes, you're
Yeah,
soldering them up, huh, pretty cool, pretty cool.
yeah.
I love, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was so young that the only way that I could get Xboxes is I would have to create ads. I think I was using Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace, and I would pay people bottom dollars, like $20. And
Yeah,
obviously, I couldn't drive, so my dad would actually drive me to the house to pick up the Xbox so that I could take it home and fix it. Yeah,
that's
very,
pretty cool.
yeah.
Oh, I'm curious. We've gotten somehow shuffled over to this gaming platform, Twitch, or not a live streaming platform that really has a strong history of streaming gaming, and I guess that's kind of where things started. We've got some folks joining us today in the what do we call this, guys? In the activity feed, and I'm curious, has anybody uh, gotten involved in something similar? Does anybody in the chat, if you've got any stories of similar stuff? I guess I ask because I know I had some similar things going on when I was younger. I guess maybe a little bit older. I was refurbishing MacBooks and MacBook Pros, tearing them apart, putting them back together, getting pieces, Frankensteining them up. Sounded very similar to what Brandon was doing. And so I wonder if anybody else had similar experiences or was getting their hands dirty with the hardware at all. Because I could imagine that most of us were probably interested in the aesthetic, the gameplay, the user experience, and those types of things. So anybody in the chat have any experiences with that, hit us up and let us know. I'd love to hear about some of them. But moving on. So you, I guess 15, 16, you had those experiences with the Xbox. You had your experiences with Blender and with Unity. And then I guess you found yourself in post-secondary. And then maybe I'll lay out a bit of a proposition, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this, if you think that this is striking at anything true or not. And that is, I think I remember the year that we met. And even within the entrepreneurship organization at Manitoba, there were a number of students on the council, and I think I had been working freelance or independent work for, somewhere in the area of 13, 14 years at that point. And I remember at one point, one of the members of council was having some struggles with their employer, their employment, and we had a little bit of a one-to-one, a bit of a heart-to-heart, and I remember proposing to them the idea of, hey, why don't you just strike out on your own? Why don't you just go do something for yourself? Go find your own clients. Go provide the services that you want to provide. Go make your own way. And I remember, I think it was 4 years ago. I remember them looking at me kind of wide-eyed, being like, "Really? You think I could do that?" And I was like, "Maybe. I don't know. You're not gonna know until you try." Like, I think you could. I'd probably hire you if I had a project and budget and money, and you were providing a service I was looking for. Uh, and I don't know if that's representative of the student body on average, 3, 4 years ago, but all of a sudden it feels to me maybe to be more the case that folks your age are experimenting with independent freelance work more often. And I know that with my generation, with the millennials, if I could probably reach out to a group of 10 of my friends that are my age, 35, I'll just say it. Uh, and I probably could find, that on average over 50% of them have done independent or freelance work. So I guess my question to you is, what does it feel like when you turn to folks in your age group and ask them about the work they're doing? Are you seeing a lot of them come back saying that they're doing independent or freelance work? And then B, do you think that's changed at all in the past 3 or 4 years?
Right, right. Interesting. I definitely do think it has changed. I'm going to actually answer the second question first, and then dive into the first, because I for sure think it's changed over the past 4 years, and I think that's largely due just to like the internet and different platforms coming out, which makes running and operating your own business, especially online, much easier than it was before. But then swinging back to question one, being how does it feel in my age group? I feel like I'm quite accepted when I'm doing independent and freelance work. I don't think that's necessarily out of the norm at all. I think it's largely due to the fact that I feel like, well, at least for my friends and other people in my realm, we put a strong emphasis on autonomy and freedom and experience, and we still value hard work and doing good and completing excellent, high quality, refined work. But we also really like having autonomy and freedom and in the choice to work when we want to work, and pick the work that we want to work or we want to do. And with all that with all that in mind, I think that it's just very very just socially acceptable to do freelance, and it's not really out of the norm. Um, Having said that, though, working freelance, I think it's a little bit of a leap of faith at first. Not quite as much anymore, but whenever you decide to um, do something that's not as traditional, there's always a moment and a pause of, is this going to work and is this going to turn out? And I know for myself, um, transitioning into freelance, I had a big question mark. I remember sitting down with my family thinking, is this possible? Is this something that I can even do, or should I stick to a more traditional route? And the way that I like to think about it is life is always like swinging on a vine. And in order to get to the next vine, you have to actually let go of one, and you're in the air for that second and you're pausing and you're almost freaking out. Am I going to catch the next vine?
Yeah.
Most of the time you do. You're going to catch the next vine. And I remember when I caught my next vine and I swung to the other side, it was quite freeing and liberating. And I feel like that leap is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter, because it's just becoming more acceptable and easier to transition into freelance work.
So for you, you're finding Tarzan.
Yeah.
That swinging between vines is becoming easier. The next vines are becoming easier to grab or even find as you're getting to the end of the last swing.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I just think that 4 or 5 years ago there was just so much uncertainty in between catching each one of the vines. It was so daunting. But
Yeah.
now I feel like that there's less uncertainty, and there's platforms such as, or professional services firms such as Oxesis, and there's also others out there where it makes catching that next vine a lot easier, and a lot less intimidating too.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I do want to bring Oxesis into the mix maybe a bit later. But let's delay the shameless self-promotion for a bit and dig into this question a bit further. So you are feeling that it's much more socially acceptable.
Yeah.
It sounds also like you're saying that you're feeling like your risk is reducing as time goes on.
Yes.
And obviously you're young, right? So I don't know. You're probably feeling. Correct me if I'm wrong. That you're ramping up, and maybe when you're done your post secondary and you're moving into the workforce, would it be the case that you would feel maybe not equally but almost as comfortable if you were faced with the choice of I'm going to go work in an office traditionally regular 9 to 5 full-time job, or if you had to say, well, or I could keep all my independent contracts going and continue with that. Do you think when you're done your degree you'd feel equally comfortable, one more than the other? What would the spread be?
Right. I think initially starting off my degree, um, I would say that was definitely not not the case. But now working freelance and being independent, I can really see myself. I think it almost snuck up on me because I think now reflecting back and thinking about being an independent, I can confidently say that leaving school, I can for sure see myself continuing down this route, and I wouldn't say that it's more or less risky than going out and finding a traditional job, as you could say.
All right, I might challenge you on that one. We'll see. We'll see if you do 5 years of independent work. We'll come back in year 5 and say how risky was it. Hindsight is 2020, as they say. But it's cool. It's cool to know that you're looking at like maybe those two roads and thinking, hey, yeah, here's two potentially viable options.
Yeah.
I guess to talk about the maybe the data that we do have specifically at our disposal currently. So you're saying you feel the risk is reduced and reducing over time. You feel like it's socially acceptable when your friends ask what you do and you tell them, I don't have a job or place of employment, right? Like I have a number of clients and I do independent work. Um, if you were, out, if maybe things were back to normal and you were out at a dinner party or a party with a whole bunch of people your age group, or your close group of friends or the people you graduated from high school with, are you talking to lots of them and finding that some of them are doing similar things? What do you think the percentage is, the split there? Are you interacting with folks your age on a day-to-day basis who are also saying that they're doing independent contract and freelance work?
Right. Interesting. I definitely do feel like I have friends who are into independent and freelance contract work. Um, but I would say it also really depends on my crowd. I have a lot of different pockets in my life, and I would say that I have a lot of friends in the Asper School of Business, and I would say that the route that is most natural and that has the least amount of resistance for in the accounting and finance industry is to still go work for one of those big four firms
Yeah.
or something. But having said that, when I tell someone who is into finance or accounting and they're doing their co-op, and I say, oh, I'm doing freelance work. This is like the industry. This is what my day to day looks like. Most of the time, the answer is, oh, that's actually really cool. It's not, oh, what the heck? What are you doing? That is the strangest thing I've ever heard. Most of the time, if they haven't really heard about it, it just takes a little explanation, and then it seems like they're very much on board, and it makes sense.
Okay. And what do you think the split would be if you're talking to your friends? Do you think it's like 5%, 10% of them have done that type of work, more, less?
I would say 10 about 10 to 15%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 10 to 15% of my friends have engaged in freelance work or are freelancing currently, and then 85 to 90% still going down a more
Yeah.
traditional route.
Where do you think you see that going? Do you think that's going to, like, if we just did a study on a cohort of folks your age every year, rolling, right? Like if we just did 21-year-olds every year over the next 10 years, do you think we're going to see that percentage increase, decrease, flatline?
Yeah, I do. I think the percentage is for sure going to for sure going to increase. Oh, I also feel like I've also looked at some stats and numbers that would also predict that it is going to go in that way. But I feel like talking to my friends and within my own circle and community, I would say that a lot of them see an appeal with freelancing and being independent. It's just a matter of their current organizations just structuring themselves differently. If anything, I think that's what's lagging. It's that the way that companies are set up, they have a pretty traditional and fixed view. And I think we're going to start to get to a point where they're going to start to decentralize and more freelance work is going to come into play. I also feel like in the past 3 months, with more things going online, we've even seen that jump even over the past 2 to 3 months, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I think that's definitely my suspicion as well. I might butcher these numbers, but in some of the research we've done here, it looks like the stats are something like between 40 and 47% of millennials have at some point engaged in freelance work, which is a number that we throw into some of our decks and stuff when we're talking here at Auxesis. Not quite time to transition into the shameless self-promotion yet. I'm curious to ask some more specific stuff about you. Can you tell our audience and myself a little bit about some of the projects that you're working on? Maybe not too specifically. Obviously, the degree of client confidentiality is up to you, but maybe just a description of the types of projects that you've been involved in lately.
Cool, awesome. I feel like as I've moved into my freelance career, you could say, I've started to narrow down the work that I do a little bit more. I feel like at first I ended up casting a very, very wide net because I didn't necessarily know what I was or what I am good at, and I still don't really think that I have a solid understanding of what I am and what my full potential is. But I think that I have a more narrow understanding standing now. And so over the past month, I've been primarily focusing on branding and design work. I've been helping out a few different businesses with brand strategy and brand identity, creating some style guides that link to value propositions, brand drivers, things like that. And then I also work very heavy on the execution side of things, because if you don't have a plan to implement your brand, it is just going to die. And so that's where I have that strong marketing background that can kick in and help out with things like website development and onboarding employees and so on. So that's what I've been really focusing on over the past month. And then also with Auxesis, I've been doing some internal work as well.
Awesome. Okay. And we'll save that for a little bit later. If you could create, like, let's say you were swinging to that next vine, what does that next vine look like if it's the ideal vine? If you're swinging and, it's great, you're really coming out of there feeling hot, and you're looking forward and you go, oh man, there's the vine. That is just beautiful. What does that next vine look like for you?
So that next vine, what it looks like for me, and what I've been also focusing on over the past month or two, is now productizing my services. I've been trying to figure out a way to succinctly sum up what I can actually deliver and how much value I can deliver to clients and so on. So that next vine, I'm really hoping I'm going to be able to succinctly productize my services, so I have a clear offer. And also, I think that next vine consists of me also narrowing down my own personal brand. And hopefully through narrowing down my own personal brand, it'll help me sell my services as well.
Okay, awesome. I love that you chose an independent vine, because the theme of the show, the title we chose today is Modern Independence, which you could maybe think of as a play on words, talking about independent workers, plural, but also maybe alluding to modern independence as an adverb, I guess. So it's very cool that you, when asked that question, you immediately think of those, I guess, internal projects for your own brand, for your own work that is your next vine. And I've also got that vine in my eyes. But before you maybe talk a little bit further about what that vine looks like, can you tell us what maybe that next client project vine looks like? If you got, an opportunity come across your desk and you had the opportunity to put it through your pipeline, and it was like you wanted this one, it was the golden,
Yeah.
nugget of work, like what would that project look like to you?
Right. Well, I think part of the reason why I'm trying to productize my services is I really want to offer a end-to-end solution for companies with branding. And I feel like a lot of the client work that I've engaged in so far is I've only nipped at certain sections. And so I'm working on one client in particular to refine my product and figure out my end-to-end solution. And so what I'm really hoping that next client project is it's end-to-end. I'm starting with strategy, figuring out the value proposition, how to put that into a positioning statement, brand story, and then hopefully I can translate that into brand identity, figure out what their visual look and feel and aesthetic is, and then hopefully I can take that and and actually execute on it. And then that execution will be very specific and very tailored to the client and very very custom. But it'll be something along the lines of website development or
Yeah.
maybe some sort of internal solution or
Okay.
so.
That was the next question I was going to ask, because I think in every industry, the jargon gets thrown around, and sometimes I think end to end. I think to us, we think end to end isn't really jargon. We know what we mean, but I guess that's what I was going to ask. Is I think the first end is understood. It's like, hey, I don't really know a client or me or somebody might be like, we know we could do something somehow somewhere. What would it be? And then what's the other end? So you talked about execution. A website is one example. Maybe you can give some other examples of execution and fulfillment and the realization of that full, end to end project.
Awesome. Yeah. So execution to me falls into two categories: internal solutions or external solutions. I find it easier to sell internal solutions off the bat to companies because I find it a little bit easier to get in the door and prove the value of branding. And then if that internal solution goes well, then I can externally execute. An example of an internal solution, I'll give one of my client examples. I'm helping this one client with employee onboarding. They're bringing on a lot of new employees, and they really want to help explain what their brand is and what they want to achieve, and then create a feedback system to make sure that their employees are always on brand and ambassadors for them.
Mm-hmm.
That project goes well, then I'm hoping I can provide an external solution, being something like a website or maybe like a social media rollout or even a marketing campaign.
Okay. Something has come into mind here, and this maybe contrasts traditional employment with independent or freelance work. This idea of the imposter syndrome, I know for years now has been kind of popular on the blog circuit, but
Yeah,
maybe more from a traditional perspective. Oh, you land that new job, it takes you 6 months to a year to get used to it, and even sometimes you still feel like an imposter, especially in technical positions. Uh,
yeah,
and then I'm hearing you talk about developing internal solutions for employee onboarding for a growing company that's obviously trusting you and relying on you, a 21-year-old Tarzan swinging from vine to vine. Like, how do you feel? Do you ever get imposter syndrome? Do you ever feel uncertain? What do you think?
oh, every day. Yeah, I think that is every single day. I think that's a natural feeling to get. I think that for the most part, whenever someone is doing something new, in shooting your shot, I think everyone's worried that, oh no, like one day the mask is going to come off and everyone's going to realize that I'm a fake or fraud. But one of these days you have to realize that no, you're actually not an imposter. You're actually doing it. If the mask comes off, you're still you, and you're still executing, and you're still doing what you do best. Um, having said that, though, yeah, I think like it is very scary to always grab that next vine and always to accept that this is my new role. I'm going to execute on it. But I find one thing that really helps to kind of shed that imposter syndrome is just to be fully honest and transparent with the other party, and just even kick off your conversations by always saying, hey, I want to try out this new thing. I'm learning. I'm willing to learn with you. And I think through some healthy conversations and engaging with each other, we can learn, we can bounce some ideas off each other, we can learn from each other, and we're going to get something that's really, really great. But I think if you walk into a new client meeting and you go, oh, I'm going to deliver this, this, and this is going to be so great, and that's so great, I think immediately you come off as, well, maybe very, very confident, but I think it can come off as a little bit sketchy and weak, and you're really just trying to almost boost up your own ego and act big. I think it's much better just to be fully transparent, to kind
Awesome.
of show that imposter syndrome.
Okay, great. Then this is making sense. This is definitely something that we resonate with here at Oxesis, the transparency, maybe even the transparency, the honesty, the what's the word when you reveal maybe even your weaknesses or your
I think like vulnerability. I think
vulnerability. That's the word I'm looking for. Sometimes, man, on a Friday, there's just so many words floating around in the old noggin. It's tough to find the ones you're looking for. Thank you. Um, so yeah, a little bit of vulnerability. I think everybody often feels like they got to walk around with the chest puffed out and put out some grand assertions. So it's nice to hear you second that opinion of you know flirting with the idea that it's okay to lay your vulnerabilities on the table. And I guess maybe you can share with us what your remedy is. So you've got those vulnerabilities, and it sounds like maybe we're being honest about our skill level and the fact that we are executing and continuing to improve how we execute, and it's a moving target and all the rest of it, and maybe even to a certain extent. And I know that this certainly has happened to me throughout the independent career or the freelance career, that sometimes balls get dropped. But I'm striking at something in particular with that client service piece. What do you think is the remedy? What has been your remedy? What's worked in terms of the service?
when the ball is dropped, what's the
Whether,
remedy?
whether or not the ball is dropped, you know, either the ball is dropped or something doesn't go quite as planned, or targets were missed, or just straight up we're learning. We're the thing that
Yeah.
we're making or doing or producing is just a work in progress. Circle one, a good example. Something that we're just trying to make better and better every time we go along. Um, I'll give you a little bit of a handhold here. For
Okay.
for us, it has been client service, and my thought is always, um, if you can maintain dedication to communication, professionalism, and constant contact with your clientele, um, and develop relationships, strong bonds and relationships at a human level, um, eventually what happens is you become somewhat of a trusted advisor. You become part of the team and the family. And I know I've worked in traditional working environments, and really good teams pick each other up when maybe there's a bit of a lag or shortcoming in a certain specific area. So I guess what I'm asking is, have you found the same in your client engagements? Have you found that you've applied a dedication to your clients in the communication and the client service as maybe balancing the scales for you?
Yeah, I think that's honestly right on the money. Because I feel like whenever the ball's dropping or something slippy, like slippery, or it's not really working out,
Yeah.
I really do believe that they can be actually solved with communication. Because like the thing is that we're all human. Your client's human, you're human. You're all trying to hit deadlines. Everything's all crazy, and I think just by engaging in healthy discussions, and let's say you fell short on something on your end, if you engage in a conversation with your client and just explain why you did what you did, just to show them your thought process and how you moved along with it, they will most likely go, okay, now I
Yeah.
understand why you did what you did. And then after that happens, yeah, I always like to determine what the block is, what the actual mistake is, and then try to come up with an actionable plan so that it doesn't happen again, and B, how to move forward. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I think that's, if I was in the client shoes, I'd be very happy if someone was like, "Yep." this is what we have in place, so it won't happen again, and this is what we're going to do moving forward. And I think just having that focus and direction goes a long way.
Awesome. And it sounds like you're even inferring something else, or you are inferring something else, which is just showing up. Maybe I'll avoid the cliches, the quotes, and the tropes. I can't remember any of them. Showing up is 90% of the. I can't remember, but just like picking up the ball, showing up, having that conversation, keeping going. Getting the routine and the pace going is, I think, been the one trick. If you could even call it a trick, which is funny because it's not a trick. It's just like
show up.
Just keep going, show up, keep going, and obviously the relationships too. It's huge. So a little bit of a break for our audience here. I'm wondering of the viewership on Twitch here. Is there anybody in the audience who's ever done any freelance or independent work? And maybe we'll wait a minute for hopefully maybe some replies to come in. I'm calling you out, guys. Anybody out there who's still in the chat that's done any independent work, we're interested to hear, A, if anybody in the chat has done any independent work, B, if you have done some independent or freelance work, maybe what type, what the flavor was, and then C, if you've done independent work, what have your experiences been in terms of maybe remedying difficult situations, and do you have any advice or specific modes of being or service that you've found can help balance the scales, maybe assuming that maybe folks are in similar situations as Brandon and I, being young professionals. And yes, I'm a young professional. So looking forward to hearing if anybody in the chat has anything to say. I'm waiting with bated breath. Obviously, I think we've only got a few viewers in the chat, a small viewership. So if you're feeling timid, that's okay. And I'm learning here too, because I don't know what proper Twitch etiquette is in terms of interacting with your chat viewership. So please accept my apologies. But moving on with Brandon here, we have had quite a bit of fun. I would propose.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been a treat.
Okay, and so we've worked on. Could you strike a guess at how many projects we've worked on together at this point?
Somewhere over 10, somewhere less than 15. I would put it in that range. Quite a few.
Okay. Favorite projects? Any that jump out to you?
I really liked. I don't know how much I can talk about, but I actually really liked working on business plan development.
Okay. Yeah, we're not going to name clients, but we can talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, but just in that, whenever like a new plan would kick off, I think just like that high level brainstorming sessions and just I don't know, I found that quite fun.
Awesome. From the brand or design side of things, was there things? Because it was interesting. I know that you were always involved in brand design and communication, brainstorming, development, conversations on the business plan projects. But funnily enough, you did more of the, I think, technical marketing stuff that you were talking about at the start of the show. You did like market research and sizing and like preparing a bunch of tables and charts and trying to find competitors, competitive analysis, that type of stuff. So I guess I don't know. I don't know if I have a question. I'm ready for the weekend, Brandon.
Yeah. I found I did find it quite fun to do like some of the more technical marketing and the research side of things. I think it's twofold. I think the first fold is I'm just, like I said before, I'm very curious, and I found it very fun to end up looking at different industries and different ideas and going, oh, no way, like this group does this and this group does that. Well, maybe we can do something like X, Y, and Z. So I always thought that was super fun. And I always think that, great design is also backed by some marketing and some research. And so I felt like when we're developing some of these plans, we would have a strong UX and almost functionality side of the plan. And so it was really fun to transition from some of that marketing research to, something a little bit more executable, and just watching how it just like shifts and transforms. And yeah, it was awesome.
Great. Okay. So that was a very fun group of projects. It was funny, you mentioned 10 projects together, and some of those projects we were doing like projects at scale for some clients, like a number of business plans at once. I think at one point we were working at somewhere between 6 and 11 plans at once, which was a hoot to try and manage a pipeline like that and put all the pieces together. It was very, very enjoyable, at
Yeah.
least from my side of things. But maybe, we've been saving up the Oxysis self promotion for a little bit here. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, um, what attracted you to continuing on with engaging with Oxysis up to Project 10 and beyond. And I'll say that our goal is to just, I want to make it to 100 to 200 with you. Like, it's been a hoot. But what was it that attracted you to working and continuing to engage with Oxysis on a recurring basis?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, like off the bat, I enjoy working with Oxysis because I find Oxysis is just very transparent. It's the easiest client engagement you're ever going to you're ever going to be in. Just because it's very transparent, and it's honestly an awesome launching pad for freelance work, because you can dip your toes in without really getting bitten by any like the sharks, or really getting into the heat of things. So that's been really awesome. Is just the transparent side of things. And then I've also really enjoyed working with Oxysis, just because Oxysis gives you really good structure to your work. And off the bat, when I was trying to figure out like some of my services and what I'm good at, I found Oxysis gave me structure to jump into a few different projects, to toy around with it, to see what works and what doesn't work, and give me a system to actually follow and go through. Because jumping into freelance work without really fully understanding like what your process is and how to do it is extremely difficult. So Oxysis, providing those systems and providing those processes was super fundamental. And I still love engaging in projects with Oxysis, because I find I'm always learning something new through learning about their systems and through learning about their processes. And actually, one last point with the whole shameless plug. We always have a morning stand up at 9 a.m. And I love the community. I think it's just awesome to wake up and dive into a community with very like-minded individuals who are extremely talented and knowledgeable, and it's just awesome. And being involved and surrounded by such a wonderful group.
Great. Well, that's very cool to hear. I've obviously got to take it with a grain of salt, but trying to get that finger on the pulse of the barometer. I think we're gonna need to do some blind taste tests or something like that. But I trust you, Brandon, and I know that you're quite an honest guy, so I appreciate the accolades there. On the exploration point, it's always been my objective to make sure that one of the things that we're helping independent contractors and freelancers with is exploring projects and work in a little bit more of a free form manner. So I'll lay out the proposition or the premise, and maybe you can tell me if this has rung true for you in your work with Oxysis. My hope is always that we engage with our clients on an extremely strategic basis, high level of dedication, professionalism, ultra high touch and high service. So we're in constant communication with our clients. We're continuing to always keep them up to date and to continue moving forward with projects as best we can. And then on the other side, we turn around and execute and fulfill with a distributed pool of independent contractors. The goal of which being that it's Oxysis's job to take the amalgamation of all the work, all the execution, and package it together into those project requirements that were determined through the initial phases with the client. And so what I hope to have that result in for the independent contractor is that an independent contractor can get a lay of the land and see what type of opportunities are out there within the world of Oxysis, and can feel comfortable engaging on a project or engaging on a number of requirements, trying that out, and know that Oxysis is there to help support on maybe those projects or requirements that an independent contractor finds difficult or not enjoyable, or maybe there's a conflict, or all sorts of different things that I experienced as an independent contractor. The hope is for Oxesis to be there to say, okay, we're giving this a shot. For whatever reason, it makes sense to maybe try something else in some other area. And so my hope is that the result is twofold. That the independent contractor, in feeling confident, exploring, finds some of those things, and a lot of them are new things. Like a lot of the work that we're doing is new types of work. Finds those things that they really click with, and then I hope that the second fold is that they can then take that resonance, that clicking that they've found, and then build that into their personal brand or their personal services, and then launch into the wider world of professional work. And our hope at Oxesis is to always stand in support of the independent contractors that we work with, rather than trying to corral them and tie them up. My hope is like, somebody, the independent contractors got work with other clients, or they connected together and referred work between each other, and like all these various examples of things that have happened, and I'm excited to hear more. But the question is what I'm laying out to you. Tell me honestly, and are there would you have anything to add or change about that?
No, I think you nailed it. I completely agree. I feel like Oxesis is always like, it's like what you have always told me, and I know you've told others, is you are a professional. You know what you need to do. We're just here for support. We're just here to help provide a system, and it's yeah. I think you just right on the money.
Great, and that is the proposition back to you, is that you're a professional. You got a real value to offer the marketplace, and you obviously have a serious knack for a number of different things. Obviously, we spent the start of the show talking about youth and experience and skill and specialization, and that trajectory. But I think you're an amazing asset to anybody who chooses to engage with you on a professional level. So, hats off to you for doing that, for the courage and for the commitment. As we wind down, there was mention of, in your own internal work, and it's something that we're also very much focused on here at Oxesis, and we've asked for your assistance in doing, and that is productizing services. Now, viewers at home might wonder, we're already back to productizing services? Weren't we just servicifying products? So software as a service, 10 years ago, Microsoft Word or Adobe or Final Cut Pro was a product, and you ordered it, or you went to the store and you bought it on a CD and you installed it on your computer, and it was a digital product. And then over the past 10 years, we've had this flip, and we flipped to, no, that's software that used to be a product, but it's a service. It's provided as a service now, right? And so I feel like a lot of people have just come to terms with the fact that products are now services. And then all of a sudden here we are today saying, okay, I don't know, now we want to productize our services. We want to take our services and productize them. Yeah. So can you maybe lay out for me even, I need to wrap my head around this continually. Can you lay out like how you see that happening? What does it mean to productize a service? Why is that important? How might it look for somebody like you? And maybe a good place to start is thinking about it through an e-commerce lens. I don't know if that helps, but what does that look like? What does productizing a service look like?
Interesting. Well, to me, maybe I'm off the rails with this one, but to me, what I feel productizing my services feels and looks like is, I feel like I've been able to provide a ton of different services, but right now they've all been closely related, but they've all been kind of all over the place, and there's no real rhythm or reason, and it's tough to figure out where they all fit together. So when I mean productize services, I mean figure out what services fit together and then create a product around that, so that I can go up to someone and say, I can help you with brand identity, but they might be thinking, well, what the heck is actually included in brand identity? And I want to be able to break down what actually is included in brand identity, what those services are to actually achieve and get a brand identity. So that's what productizing my services looks like to me. But maybe you have a different take or spin on it.
I think it's very similar. And I guess I allude to e-commerce the past maybe 5 or 6 years of some of my more traditional working experiences have been with professional services firms primarily, and it's always been interesting. I've done branding projects and website and execution and development and different projects for some of those clients. And it's funny, whenever I show that work to folks in my own generation, they want to see a funnel. They want to see, a click to buy. They want to see that user journey, that UX or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, when you're selling like a big high touch professional service, a retained service, or accounting or recruitment or legal services or whatever it might be, you don't see a lot of that stuff. It's more of like either the website is purely a digital business card, or the website is a way of interacting with or capturing lead information. And to me, productizing services is maybe something in that arena that is on the horizon. And I definitely imagine a world where people are clicking to buy these high value services. So you might think of, some of the most premium enterprise level professional services. Imagine engaging with Ernst & Young or Deloitte & Touche or whoever for enterprise services for a large business. These are contracts that are hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars sometimes. I definitely see at least engaging on retainer and launching projects in a productized manner on a website, for example. And that might be further down the road, but I definitely see in the shorter term boutique professional services firms, boutique service providers being able to say, yes, here are our offerings, here are our service areas, our components, our packages, all the rest of them, and then really productizing them to saying, like, this is a turnkey product. Maybe there is some negotiability in the price and the terms and the timelines and all the rest of that stuff that has to go into with service provision. But to productize it in the sense of like, here is a product that is comprised of some very boutique or very focused services, and like, let's put it in the cart and check out and pay. Right. And obviously there's other components, right? You need solutions to, how do you launch? How do you move through an engagement letter and a contract? And how do you give the other party the opportunity to revise that contract and adapt the services to their specific requirements? Because I think customization is one of the hallmarks of true professional service providers. But that's really what I see at Auxesis, finding a way to develop the logic of like, here are my service offerings and here's what it might look like to engage and purchase one of those as like a product, as in something you could take off the shelf at the grocery store and put in your cart and run through the checkout.
Yeah. No, I think that's very cool, and I feel like I really hope I get to a point one day where I'm at the point where like there is like a click to buy function or feature that I can offer. I feel like now where I'm at is I'm still trying to figure out where things are sitting and what the demand actually is for my services. So I have like a certain level of customizability that I think I need, but I still think loosely I'll be able to productize things, at least from like a maybe more of a loose level.
Awesome. Have you seen anybody, and maybe we'll ask the audience at home as well in the chat, have you seen, or has anyone in the audience seen examples of maybe the most far-reaching of productized services? Maybe you've seen, website developers who say, launch a project with us, click here, pay for your retainer, or whatever it might be. I know I've seen SEO services that you can, sometimes it's up to $1,000 or $1,000 a month for SEO services, and I know a lot of SEO service providers, search engine optimization service providers, are having some luck with productizing those services. Have you seen any others?
Oh, I'm trying to think now. I'm put on the spot. I feel like that it's slowly starting to happen, but I'm having a tough time thinking of an example.
Okay, I've seen a lot of it mainly platform based. So we've got some marketing partnerships, and we're tuned into some platforms, and so I see, click to launch a brand platform development project, or click to
Yeah.
launch a logo design or even web development and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
lots of
and
that.
in that way, I think I was trying to think of an example of like you had mentioned accounting firms and law firms. I don't think I've seen anything quite like that, but
That's what I'm
from
wondering. Yeah.
yeah from what you're sharing, from what you're sharing, yeah, I've for sure seen those.
Yes. Okay. So that is I think we're talking the same language. I got my finger on the pulse, and if anybody out there starts to see any of these types of things, please do let us know. Send us a message on Twitch or find us on social media or the website, oxesis.com. I won't try and spell it. But I am waiting to see, you know, and I'm sure it must be out there. The first accounting firm, the first law firm, the first recruitment firm, the first engineering firm that says, you know, pick a service package, put it in your cart, and launch that service. That's a more traditional professional service. I want to see some of that. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people have tried it. Maybe there's just so many reasons why that is very difficult. But I guess what I'm saying is where I see all those difficult reasons, I just see a million potential solutions as to how you might remedy it and actually push something like that into the marketplace. And who knows? Maybe the marketplace responds by saying no, it's way too nuanced to launch a traditional professional service in that manner. But I got my hunches. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, same. I think the most difficult part about creating that creating that productized service with a link to a buy button and everything is just the amount of education needed before actually purchasing it. Because I know for a fact if I went to a law firm, I'd be interested in viewing a few different products. But I don't know much about law. I might actually book a meeting with someone to end up learning a little bit more what actually each product means. But I'm sure we'll get there.
Well, with even this, like, here's a productized meeting, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
Click a button, join the stream. Here you go.
yeah.
Little bit different, and could potentially be like that bridge. All right, so we're 7 minutes over. How you doing for time?
Oh, I'm doing excellent. What about you?
I can't remember what my schedule looks like. I hope I haven't. I hope I haven't pushed anybody back. Let me take a quick look. No, I got a 2 p.m., so I'm good. Somebody was gonna give me a ring between 1 and 2, but I'm pretty good. So if you're cool, can we do a little bit of human stuff?
Let's do it. Let's kick it.
Alrighty, Brandon. So we've heard about the cycling. We've heard you're a hipster. You've been on the show, I think, 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah.
Tell me something I don't know. Come on. What is? Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets. No, I'm just joking.
No. Other than cycling, hipster, music.
What about your childhood? Is there anything that you really, really got into as a kid? Like, I learned about the video game stuff.
Yeah, you know about the video. I'm trying to think of something that'll just surprise you. That'll just blow you out of the waters. But I don't know.
Did you play sports as a kid?
I did, but I was not the best at soccer.
Oh, really? Oh, I was great.
Yeah, I was for sure the kid on the soccer field picking the dandelions, and not
Yeah. I was a kid hitting and swinging the t-ball post over and over.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking. I don't know. I love to travel. I know most people like to travel, but I think if there's any place that I would even move to and after my travels is California. I've taken a few trips to California and I've loved it. And being a Winnipeg born and raised guy, I just loved going to the ocean. And every single time I'm in California, I surf, and I'm actually not bad at surfing.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to come back on the show with some video evidence of this surfing prowess you speak of.
Will do. Yeah, will
Cool.
do.
If you could move, would you move to California full time? Would you move for work? Would you ever be like? Obviously, you might be interested in the Silicon Valley lifestyle or the LA lifestyle. Do you ever see that for
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah. I think the whole lifestyle there really speaks to me. Although there is something just being about Canada, and I my parents have a cottage, and I've always loved just the whole cottage lifestyle and everything too. So I don't know. There's trade offs with both. I think California's just super cool, and I honestly I love surfing. So yeah.
Awesome. Any other favorite travel locations? Where have you been that really got you going?
I really liked I in Paris actually. I've really enjoyed going to Paris. I think it had to do primarily with the architecture and also again the cycling scene there. I thought was really cool. I've always wanted to go to actually just France in general and even ride some of the Tour de France routes. I think that would just be unreal.
Awesome. Yeah, I could see you getting in there, putting the spandex on, getting the serious tuck going, right in there with those French cyclists.
Yeah, the shaved legs and everything.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Uh, how about the weekend? What's on the docket for the weekend?
I'm going out. I'm going out today, out to my parents' cottage, and honestly, I just expect to kind of just more of a relaxed and fun time. Not too far away from the cottage. That there's this thing. It's called the Lazy River, and it's this massive canal that stems out from a dam, and you can actually take a blown up floaty or tube, and you can just float down the river. And I think it's about a 2 hour cruise just going down the lazy river. And I'm hoping to do that because it's always quite beautiful and scenic.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. You
Yeah.
get you get a crew together.
What about yourself? I want to know your human side.
Oh, my human side.
Yeah.
Um, Snowboarding is number one at the heart of there somewhere. It's been something I've been putting on the back burner for a number of years.
We should board sometime.
Yeah, let's do
Yep.
it this winter. We'll go. Yes, absolutely. So that's big. Outdoors is big. The dog is big. The girlfriend is big. Family is probably, well, family's number one actually. That's been such a treat over the past few years. I was on the West Coast as well for about a decade, mainly for the human side and also for work to a certain extent. And I've been back in Winnipeg for about 5 years now, and I'm about a 10-minute drive away from my parents' place now, and maybe 15 minutes away from my sister, and 20 minutes away from my girlfriend's family. And that has just been just unbelievable, unbelievable. I've absolutely loved being able to socialize with them and enjoy, being a human with them. Uh, and then the support has also been massive. It's the type of support I think you get from family that,
Dude.
even, we might talk about, a family at Oxesis and professional organizations and relationships, but man, those people who've known you your whole life, there's something else going on there. So it's been a hoot. Thank you. I think I've said a hoot about 80 times today. But it's Friday. I'm in a good mood, so lots of hoots going on. Oh, that came out wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of it. Travel's great. Friends are great. Music is awesome. Hitting the drums, the guitar, getting the jam session on with the homies and the homettes is
Awesome.
always fantastic.
Awesome.
Uh, and reading and learning is big up there too.
Do you have a favorite book at the moment?
Favorite book? I'm reading a book called by Steven Pinker called The Stuff of Thought right now, which is fascinating. Reverse engineering the rules of language to gather insight into not only development but psychology, human psychology. Phenomenal book. Phenomenal book. Uh, Besides that, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, favorite.
Interesting. Wow. I just like I knew you'd be reading something kind of weird, but also like I secretly want to read it myself.
Well, the Pinker stuff is interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see if Mr. Pinker's in the news a bit more. Hats off to him, and he's been pretty cool. But it's surprisingly not that weird. Yeah, I think you might like some of his books. The Stuff of Thought in particular. Maybe some of his other books are a bit politicized, but the Stuff of Thought is not too politicized. It's pretty cool. How about you? Favorite authors, books, anything?
Oh, I just read How to Build a Brand Story by Donald Miller, and I've been meaning to read. I've read the first little bit. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I've been getting more into negotiating actually, so that's a
Chris, he's the FBI negotiator guy I see on my feed all the time.
yeah.
He's
Yeah,
kind of badass, eh?
he is kind of badass. Yeah, I had heard about him a couple of years ago actually before he had released his masterclass. And I had written I had read parts of his book, and they really spoke to me, and I found it really interesting. And now I want to finally just read start to finish Never Split the Difference. It just looks so cool.
Cool. Do you know the takeaway? Could you summarize the premise of the book?
Yeah, Never Split the Difference. Well, Never Split the Difference is written by Chris Voss, and he is an ex FBI negotiator. And he started off negotiating for the FBI in a time when they didn't have negotiation tactics. Basically, the FBI's idea of negotiating was to enter places with guns and just obliterate the whole thing. So Chris Voss came around, and he found a way to negotiate with different parties to diffuse situations. Having said that, he has applied his method to business and how to negotiate in business, and he what really caught my attention is Harvard Business School has one of the best negotiation classes in the world, and Chris Voss was invited to attend one of these classes, and he took part in two negotiations, one with the best student in the class at the time, and the other with the professor who was teaching the course. And he not only won the negotiation, but he had far exceeded the expectation of the negotiation. So the book just outlines his different tactics, what he does, some of his life experience, and his do's and don'ts in negotiating. And
Okay, so here's a practical question.
Yeah.
Moving back into work conversation, we're gonna wind things down with a work question.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, an independent, I have been targeted marketing from Chris Voss, who I know runs coaching and seminars that very often are targeted on entrepreneurs because, good gosh, Lord only knows that we gotta have some negotiating capabilities. And then also another gentleman by the name of Chris Do, who runs a channel called The Future, and he also provides similar services, helping, coaching, talking to entrepreneurs, independents, freelancers about not only just design, brand, and approach to the services, but also approach to the business side of things. And it seems evident to me that the two of them have two different opinions on the subject of anchoring. Have you heard him talk about it?
Yeah, I do. I have to say though, I do also follow what Christo does, and I know he's actually referenced Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. So I'm more familiar with Chris Voss's idea of anchoring, not as much of Chris's, but yeah, both
well,
of those.
This might be good. We might complement each other here. Then I'll maybe share what I know about Chris Do's opinion, and you can share Chris Voss's real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. I think from what I understand, and obviously it's my exposure has been limited, right? I haven't poured through all the YouTube videos, and he's never coached me. Sounds like his general proposal is for the independent to anchor first and anchor high. And for those listening at home who might need a bit of clarification, anchor is a price, and in negotiation, an anchor is a price that you throw out there, as in like this is the price or the ballpark of prices that is like the spot. You do it with a bit of force and wherewithal. And so Chris proposes, as an independent, if you go into that conversation and you think things are going to go to the $1,000 ballpark, he says anchor first and anchor high. So throw out $3,000 or $5K or $10K or whatever, right? And don't back down. And funny, being a fierce negotiator, I'm curious about Chris Voss's opinion on the anchor. And so, can you fill us in on Chris Voss's thoughts?
Yeah, actually, now that you speak about a little bit about Christo, I actually I now am familiar with his anchoring technique. I think it's always like he always says have like a white glove top tier option, then you have a low end option, and then you have a middle one that seems to be the most reasonable, and he always plays with that to find the right price. Chris Voss believes that, I could be wrong, but I think he believes that anchoring to a certain extent can actually kill the deal, because he doesn't want to see the top, or that he doesn't actually want to show the top price, because I think he believes that he can get above that top price. And the way that Chris Voss, I guess you could call this an anchor, is he frames all of his questions in a way where he gets the other party to buy into his problem by always asking how. So he always tries to reframe the problem in the other party's mind to align with the direction that he wants to go in. And through asking these how questions, that's usually how he ends up climbing up the ranks in the negotiation. But he never actually labels that top white glove price.
That's an interesting thought. Huh. What do you think? Where do you lie? Which advice do you think you find yourself leaning towards?
I think I actually like Chris's.
But they're both Chris. Which Chris?
Sorry, Christo. Yeah, Christo.
Christo?
I like his idea of. I think you do a blend between the two. I like the way that Christo anchors, and I think you should apply Chris Voss's techniques of reframing the problem in the other party's mind to get them up. I think you use Chris Voss's method to get the other party from one tier to the next tier, and then to the next tier. So I think you do kind of a combination of both.
Okay, great. I think the underlying premise behind all of it is that true service is worth paying appropriately for, and there may be the question being raised if you're an audience member sitting at home going, well, like, why are my service providers even having these conversations, right? And it's because not everybody wants to or needs to compete on price. And you see many successful brands out there who don't compete on price. Maybe they compete on quality or time or flexibility or other things that could be needed and valued beyond just cost effectiveness. Actually, cost being one of them. But just a personal experience, I recently engaged with some serious professionals, and I thought to myself, I am going to go out there and get referrals for the best accounting firm and the best law firm that I can find, and I'm not even going to care about price. And I can tell you now, being 3 months later, that I am eternally grateful that I got that advice from people in my network, and I am so happy I didn't seek out people who competed on price, and maybe even the folks that I did, but I didn't even bother thinking about the price. They spit out to me their retainer prices and talked about their billing and all the rest of it. And you think about accountants and lawyers, and you're thinking about $400 an hour and all this type of stuff. Yeah. And I think about building a business and the services that I'm leveraging in order to make that happen. And I'm only 3 months in now with those professionals, and I think to myself, thank God that I didn't. Thank God, because I couldn't imagine. Hats off to them; they are absolutely amazing. But thoughts? What would you say to independents who are struggling with pricing and negotiation, do you have any advice for them?
Right. Yeah. First off, I don't care what people say. Price matters. Like your pricing matters. And even though there is no real wrong way to price, I really like Chris Do's philosophy behind pricing. Like let's say we wanted to do a video shoot, and I know that, let's say that my price to do the video shoot would be around $4,000, and the client really only wants to shoot a video that's $1,000. Well, if you're confident that if that client puts down the $4,000 and they are going to get great return from it, then why are you going any less? Why would you end up charging them $1,000? And if the client comes back at you and says something along the lines, it's like, well, I guess I could get it done for less. It's like, well, it won't be done to the same quality, and it doesn't make sense to thinking about incentivization. Money does end up incentivizing people, and it's like if you can shoot a really great video for $4,000 and it's going to get that person a great return, why would you incentivize them less to make you a video that's worse? That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? So I think if you know the true value that your services do create, I think it's very fair to explain the way that your pricing works to clients.
Well, it's interesting. I think you started out with an example from one of Christo. They do that role playing thing, right? And he talks about the $1,000 video, the 4,000. Like, what kind of video do you want to make? He called up. Oh, I want you to make me one of those banger videos that you do, or
Yeah.
whatever the one is, right? And he frames it from a value perspective as like, don't think about the cost. Think about more so the value or the benefit or the relationship between what you invest and what you get out of it. And then I thought what you did was nice, where I think you really specifically articulate, and this is a word that we use all the time over at Oxesis, incentivization. And incentivization is, tied to price, but it's more than money. There's so many factors that motivate an individual or incentivize an individual, but I think that showing that you value the efforts to an X degree is such a good starting point. And I guess that's kind of what our hope and philosophy has been at Oxesis is we're starting out, we're small, we're dealing with budgets of varying sizes. But my hope with independence is always to be able to say to an independent engaging on a product, like, we want to pay you well, but B, find a way to keep paying you closer to what you're worth, and to stay away from even hourly stuff, and to find a way to run hourly analyses for which people can really activate their maximum earning potential or up there. So that incentivization piece is something that always rings true to me and comes home, because man, it's complicated.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was just gonna say, and you were also one of the people who changed my mind about incentivization as well too. I remember we had talked about how money incentivizes people way back when, and I was like, oh wow, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think so often in these social literacy conversations that we try and like get away from money. It's life is more than money, and all, or there's more that we just like. Yes, okay, very much so. But at the end of the day, like, good gosh, does it ever make a difference if you're hired on a project for $1,000 or $4,000? Like,
yeah,
it's just something that puts that much of a spring in your step is really going to translate into a different level of work. So,
yeah, and I know also, like, Chris Do's mindset behind it as well as you're not quoting a price thinking that other company is going to lose money from your services.
Yeah, exactly.
That company is going to get, X amount more dollars in because of those services. And I think that's just a great way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think too, if the company got to the point that they made the decision that they needed this service or this thing produced, whatever it might be, it's like, you already know you wanted to activate some benefit, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you weren't thinking of it from the mindset of I'm just going to flush $1,000 down the toilet. You were thinking of it from the mindset as like we need a tool to do something, right? So yeah, I hope that maybe the trends that you are predicting with your age group and that I'm seeing with mine and the way that the world of independent work is growing, I hope that, as folks engage more and more in independent work, more and more folks engage with independent contractors, and slowly bring the conversation back around to value and potential versus cost and expense solely. Yeah, cost and expense important, but it's the potential, it's the reason, it's the why. Like, why did you want a video produced? Well, it's not because you had $1,000 laying around that you wanted to give to somebody. It's because you wanted to do something with it, right?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think if you work on a strategic, if you're working on a strategic level, you can give strategic prices. If someone, just wants one thing off and they're not really thinking about or care about the return, yeah, like go to Fiverr, or go. You can pay $50 for a lot of stuff. It may not help you make more money. There's no promise that it actually will. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what your return will be, but yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
think that might be a topic of conversation for another episode in the future. As always, like we've had a hoot
yeah,
with you. We'd love to bring you on again in the future.
awesome.
Maybe again on a panel. It might be fun to discuss with a panel uh, uh, the the area of the Venn diagram between strategic pricing and productized services. I've
Yeah,
always had trouble reconciling that in my head. How do you
yeah,
productize a service but then still reserve yourself the ability to price strategically? That's how do we wrap our heads around that one? So,
that'd be cool. I'd like
okay.
that.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, I will say thank you very much, Brandon. We really loved having you on today.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to chat.
Excellent. And yeah, also maybe we'll jump on a call this afternoon. You want to wrap up that project?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah, let's do
Okay. Thank you very much to our audience at home, all our viewers in the live chat on Twitch. Thank you so much for the lurk, for the raid, for popping by. Thank you, Mr. McHuntingtons. And I hope everybody out there has a wonderful weekend, gets some much needed rest and relaxation in, and is raring to go on Monday morning. I know we will be over and out. Thank you all very much.